As a people, we are travelers. People travel a lot. People travel by plane, train, bus, on foot, and probably the most common of all, by car. Some of these trips are for business. Some are vacation, just to get away from things. Some are to see people. Some are to take in new sights and meet new people. We travel a lot. I know that sometimes travel is easy. Many times travel is hard. And sometimes it's a real challenge. During the worst days of COVID, I recall in 2020, there was a death of an elderly woman, and one of her daughters lived in California. And the daughter and her husband wanted to come. They weren't sure they could even fly, so they decided to drive, but they weren't sure that there would be any places to stay along the way. So they got a hold of a mobile home, a camper of sorts, a large camper, and they pulled that all the way from California to Ohio so that they would have some security, a place to sleep each night. Sometimes we travel even when it's hard because we know it's worth it. Now, I like to travel, and I travel whenever I can. But there's one type of travel that I've never done. I tried it already, but it didn't work. I cannot travel without a destination. I remember I was with a couple of friends on vacation, and one evening we were sitting there having dinner, talking about the next day, and we agreed we would not decide where to go. That we would just get in the car and wherever the wind took us. That was our plan. That was in the evening. We each went to our bedrooms overnight. Next morning we met for breakfast. And as we got together for breakfast, each of the three of us already had decided what we should do with that day. Somehow we could not plan. We had to have a destination. We had to have a goal. We had to have a purpose for the day. Otherwise, it would have felt, we didn't know what it would feel like. I can't do it that way. Maybe you can, I cannot. So today we talk about journey, the journey of the Magi. And guess what? Theirs was not one of those where they just went hoping they would find something. They went on a trip with a very precise destination. They had a purpose. They had a goal. They weren't quite sure what that would be, but they knew that there was something there. And they had the original GPS, a star. They had something to guide them. We don't know much about the Magi. We really don't. Tradition tells us that they came from various corners of the world. What we do know is they were probably scholarly people, sometimes called astrologers. And if you think of astrology like the things in the newspaper, no, don't think of that. But rather, astrologers were people who tried to read the signs in the sky and find out what God was speaking to the people. They were probably reasonably wealthy to be able to undertake a trip like this. We know that they traveled across borders and boundaries. They symbolize and represent the good news. The word Epiphany means manifestation. The good news of Jesus' birth being manifested to the whole world. So they had to come probably a very dangerous journey as well. And eventually they followed the star. They followed Christ. What's really fascinating to me is their starting point. They had two beginnings. Because they were wise and scholarly and they really took to heart what their life was all about, they probably were able to look at themselves in the mirror and say, my life is good, but there's something missing. There's something more that I need and want. The other thing is they found the star, and the star, of course, is so evident of a guiding principle that comes from God. Let's call it the call, the dream, the something that incites us and says, there's got to be more out there. So they realized something was missing, and they heard a call, and they put the two together, and that made the journey worthwhile. Their journey was with a destination in mind. It was purpose-driven. And we often talk about the journey of our own life. Our lives have to be purpose-driven. We can't just go where the wind blows us. Now, I suspect everybody here has some sort of plan for life. Maybe it's not a real big plan. Maybe the plan is to get through this weekend. Maybe it's a plan to get through school. Maybe it's a plan to get a job. Maybe it's a plan to have a family. Maybe it's a plan to have a good life. My challenge to you is to think bigger than that. Think like the Magi would. What is God calling us to that's beyond those little, and maybe not so little, plans that we have? What is the real purpose of our life? What is the star that's calling us and beckoning us forward? What is saying, as good as we are and as good as we think we have it, there's got to be more? What is the mystery out there that is going to say, leave things behind and pursue it? That's the challenge. This is an important message for all of us. And it's not just that we already know the message of Jesus' birth, but we want to know how that affects us and how it transforms our lives. You've all heard the saying, it's been around for years, that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with that first step. There's some truth to that. You have to take the first step. But the saying is not really totally correct, because even before that first step, a journey has to have a destination. A journey has to have the star. The journey has to have the goal. The journey has to have the purpose. Our journey of life has to have a purpose.